Hell Is Us may be one of the most unique games of 2025. Part Souls-like, part adventure game, part detective simulator, this gargantuan puzzler is dense, immaculately detailed, and devilishly dark. You won't play anything else like it this generation. You play as Remy, a sociopath that has snuck his way into the war-torn country of Hadea. Except this isn't his first time here. Remy was born in Hadea and smuggled out as a child, but he's made his return in search of his parents with very little information to go on. Simply knowing that he came from a village called Jova and that his father was the blacksmith there, Remy starts digging around and asking questions. And this is when Hell Is Us begins to unfurl its very large yarn, and it needs you to start taking notes. Literally, Hell Is Us does not feature a traditional map or marker system. Instead, almost everything you need to navigate its world is in its environmental details. Small specifics and discarded notes, descriptions from surviving characters, and visual design. All of it is diegetic and brilliantly immersive. A datapad will keep note of the big main quest descriptors to point you in the right direction, but the game's good deeds, its version of side quests, are entirely down to your memory and attention to detail. Now, you can mark specific pieces of evidence in your datapad, but I personally opted to scribble down my findings in an actual notepad. By the time I was done with the game, I had pages filled with ramblings of ancient royal feuds and symbol scribblings. That may make you think that Hell Is Us is a hardcore game, and in some respects it maybe is. However, Rogue Factor has masterfully designed its world so that across over 30 hours with the game, I never once felt the absence of a traditional map or quest system. If a character describes a landmark that you must go to, they'll give you all the details you need to figure it out. In addition, a compass and audio and visual cues are there to help, making discovery and exploration feel very natural. I never once got lost, and while a notepad really did help me, I don't think it's mandatory. So, as you may be able to tell, I'm a huge fan of this approach, but it could have been a complete bust if the world itself was well designed but narratively dull. However, Hadea may go down as one of the most interesting video game worlds in recent memory. Comprised of a dozen or so open levels, varying from expansive fields to claustrophobic libraries, Hadea is a country steeped in religious feuds and ravaged by a bloody civil war. It's an oppressively dark setting at times, with some streets littered with the corpses of children and horrendous visions of genocide around every corner. And there are ghoulish creatures too, just to make matters worse. So much of the world's narrative centres around a religious divide between Palamists and Sabinians. It appears fairly surface level to start. The Palamists hate the Sabinians and the Sabinians hate the Palamists, and we don't really know why. You'll meet a variety of characters from both sides, gaining more context along the way. Quite often these people will have vital information to help you on your quest, but you can also help them by finding items, whether those be keys, medication, or even just clearing the way for them. Sometimes an item for a person in one level can be found in another, and it's then that you should be making mental or physical notes so as to complete your good deeds. These often have small gameplay rewards, but more often than not, it's an opportunity to learn a little bit more about Hadea and its ongoing conflict. However, Hell Is Us and its central mystery aren't so interested in the details of its current war so much as it is in the history that got them there in the first place. Quite quickly, you're exploring deep cave systems and reading through ancient scripts detailing inquisitions, massacres, and royal betrayals. The way the game steadily broadens and delves deeper into its conspiracies is spectacularly entertaining. Through its notes, speaking with NPCs, and studying the environment, the game begins to form an ancient narrative that, despite being literally old news, is endlessly enthralling. The game nails the aesthetic of abandoned medieval churches, caves and towers, so from a visual point of view, it's incredibly cool. However, by paying attention to its story, which is a byproduct of its hands-off design, uncovering these locations or solving ancient mysteries feels incredible. It's like the best sort of moments from the Indiana Jones movies or Uncharted games, where you're uncovering things that might not have been seen or touched for hundreds or thousands of years, while slotting in another puzzle piece in the jigsaw that is Hadea. Narratively then, Hell Is Us is an absolute doozy, but in a weird sort of way. Everything interesting about it has already happened. This isn't really the kind of game with expansive cutscenes or gripping character arcs, and Remy as a sociopathic protagonist is a bit dull. But there's something enchanting about piecing together another part of Hadea's history by discovering an old letter or a knight's corpse. It's not all letter reading and Hadean sightseeing, of course. Hell Is Us is split by an affinity for puzzles and combat. Puzzles are almost entirely about opening new doors to explore even further. You'll be piecing together parts of historical knowledge to make up door codes, matching up artifacts to certain positions, and finding vital keys to open new pathways. It's almost like a Resident Evil game with its approach to level design, with tight mazes that you'll gradually open up. There are a few puzzles in here that had me racking my brain. Thankfully I had the old notepad to fall back on, but nothing ever feels impenetrable. Something I reckon some people will struggle more with though is combat. Made up of melee weapons, you'll take on the pale nightmares wandering Hadea with swords, polearms, axes, great swords and so on, each of which can be leveled up, upgraded and applied with a sort of elemental damage type. Skills can be applied to these weapons and the same can be said for your little drone Cappy. Both the drone and the weapons have cooldown abilities that you will use in combat. Enemy variety isn't all that, but the game does throw tougher and tougher challenges your way as you delve deeper into the game. Most creatures will eventually host these sort of colourful spirits called the Haze, which need to be killed first before damage can be done to the main target. However, if you aren't quick enough, the Haze will respawn. I played on the hard difficulty, so combat could be truly brutal at times, especially when multiple enemies are attacking at once. However, I personally enjoyed the challenge. There is a nice mechanic that allows you to gain back health from damage done to enemies if you tap R1 at the right time. It means you can completely turn around fights if you're tactical and play things slow. However, thankfully the game is fairly forgiving when it comes to death. If you die in a level, any enemy you killed will remain dead, and there's no penalty for death either. The only instance where enemies will respawn is if you actually leave one of the levels to go to another. However, once you've figured out how to close the mysterious time loops, you can freely explore these cleared levels. Now there is an option for performance and quality mode on both the PS5 and PS5 Pro. The base PS5 was largely smooth sailing on performance, with some frame rate hiccups when transitioning between major areas. On the PS5 Pro, which is the gameplay you're watching here today, the game ran near flawlessly with the tiniest bit of pop-in. However, it didn't spoil an otherwise incredibly sharp looking game that effectively utilises PSSR. I also noted some subtle but nice DualSense haptic implementation. And just before we round things up, the music. It's good. It's very good. With an incredibly dense lore and labyrinthine level design, Hell Is Us is a captivating experience. The game takes its solid but tough combat and chin-scratching puzzles and elevates them with a century-spanning mystery that goes deeper and deeper. Its hands-off approach means there's a huge emphasis on the world, and thankfully Rogue Factor does not disappoint. It's not going to be for everyone, but for those that love a good lore-filled mystery, this is a PS5 must-play. I'm giving Hell Is Us a 9 out of 10. Thank you so much for checking out my review of Hell Is Us. Let me know if you plan to check it out down in the comments below, and while you're there, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more PlayStation video content just like this. Anyway, until next time, I've been Aaron, and this has been Push Square.